Vă mulțumesc că încă sunteți aici și sper să ni se alăture și colegii care au ieșit puțin până afară. Astăzi vom vorbi în ultima sesiune despre offshore wind, dar de asemenea și despre onshore. Vom avea un panel, să zicem așa, mix, pentru că doi dintre invitați sunt în această zi prezenți aici fizic, însă unul se conectează online. Și din acest motiv, cumva, și preferați să vorbesc și pentru confortul lor în engleză în continuare, dacă este în regulă cu dumneavoastră. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our final panel discussion on the exciting potential of offshore and onshore wind in Romania. And I would like to invite on stage our first invitee, the Oana Ijdelea, who is the managing partner at Ijdelea and Associates. Hi, Oana, and welcome. Up next, I would like to invite Taras Kachmarchuk, if that is the right pronunciation. Yes, you are invited on the stage. He is the Vestas Director of Sales on Southeast Europe. So, welcome, Taras. And we also have, from the online site, we have Whittaker, the co-lead of World Bank Offshore Wind Development Program. I hope that Sean can see us and we can see him as well on the screen. After he is projected, maybe Sean, you can confirm that if you can hear us and see us and all is good from your side.
I can hear you well. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
That's great, Sean. We really appreciate you taking your time for this session. So to set expectations, we have around 15 minutes allocated for this panel, and after each presentation we will take a few questions from the audience as well. So be ready for that moment. A short intro regarding the offshore wind first. In Romania, we have the primary legislation that is adopted since May 2024. We have also the maritime spatial planning that has been approved last year in November. And looking at the events and at what the Ministry of Energy or other institutions declare, we have also the government let's say commitment. So at this moment, these are the beginning of further steps to adopt the second legislation. But we are confident that these are very, very good. This is a good start of the things. As we delve into this promising sector, let's explore how harnessing wind can not only power our future, but also create sustainable opportunities for growth. And to make a wind-related pun, I am sure that the insights from our panelists will blow us away. So we will see further. And Sean, since you accepted to have your coffee with us from Washington, D.C., where right now I think it's 8:30 in the morning, please let me remind everybody that at the end of September, the World Bank, together with the Ministry of Energy, launched the roadmap for offshore wind in Romania. And considering your significant contribution and your extensive experience helping other countries tap their offshore wind potential, could you please share with us some of the most interesting and relevant findings from the roadmap? And a quick remark, Sean, your presentation I think will be projected to the audience, and you can please let me know when to change the slides for you. Is that working?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Marta, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you here today. Sorry that I can't be with you in person, but as Marta said, we were in Bucharest in September to launch the Offshore Wind Roadmap for Romania, which is a publication that we had been developing for about close to 3 years, and we're we were very proud to be part of working with the government of Romania on its offshore wind journey. And through, as Marta said, in the publication of the primary law on offshore wind. So certainly, it's been great to see these Romania take these steps towards being the having the first wind turbines in the water of the Black Sea. So, my name is Sean Whittaker. So I'm the co-lead of the World Bank Group's Offshore Wind Development Program. This is a program that we have been running for about 5 years now, and over the past, since 2019, we've worked with about 24 countries around the world, helping them to accelerate their uptake of offshore wind. Maybe next slide, Marta.
Just a moment.
Thank you.
I think they are just projecting them right now. If the technical team can help us with this, please.
Sure. While they're doing that, I can talk just briefly. What I wanted to go over in the presentation today is just a high-level discussion of what the roadmap's objectives were. Looking at really the central question that the roadmap is trying to answer, which is, why consider offshore wind for Romania and the Black Sea? And then I'll talk about the two scenarios that we developed as part of the roadmap to, looking at two different potential futures for offshore wind development in Romania. And then I'll close off with a discussion on some of the recommendations that we came up with, particularly around the issue of supply chain development, which is relevant to this session today. You can go to the next slide, Marta, if you're...
Okay, Sean, thank you. We will progress here. You can continue. Thank you.
Okay. So it should be, I can't see the slides that you're looking at, but there's one that says roadmap aims should be up now. As I said, this roadmap was put together by the World Bank Group's Offshore Wind Development Program with funding from the European Union and the DG Reform Program. The analytical work was carried out by BVG Associates in association with CMS. I see Verenia is with you today. So, and then also the Institute for Power and Engineering. So. The aims of the roadmap are, fairly simple. It's just to explore the impact of two different, offshore wind scenarios. I can see the slides there now. So click through again and again, and once more. Perfect. Go back. Just back one slide. Yeah.
Is this okay?
Keep going back. Click once. And just click once. So the aims of the roadmap, as said, were to really explore the impact of two different possible offshore wind growth scenarios. Chosen to cover realistic paths for Romania in the context of its future energy needs. And really what the roadmap, go to the next one. Really what the roadmap was seeking to do is not necessarily to say, that Romania should pursue one path or another in its in offshore wind, but rather to say, here are two potential paths that could be taken, one high growth scenario and one low growth scenario. And under both scenarios, what would the impacts be from a technical, commercial, environmental, and social standpoint? And then essentially to use that as evidence on which the policies should be based to make them to make either of those paths a reality. So we're not saying thou shalt do this or thou shalt do this, but rather saying, if you do go down this path, this is likely what the impacts are going to be on both a positive and a negative standpoint. So, next one, Marta. Next. Perfect. So why? It's really the first question that the roadmap sought to explore is, why would you explore offshore wind potential in the Black Sea to start with? The map that you see here is one that we published in 2019, and it was the first time that anyone had done an assessment at a high level of the technical potential for offshore wind in the Black Sea. And this map, 5 years ago, what we looked at is two aspects. One is wind speed, and the other is water depth. So the areas that you see that are cross-hatched are the areas that where you have a water depth of 50 meters or less, and a wind speed that is greater than 7 meters per second at 100 meter of height. The areas that you see that are dotted are areas that where the water depth is between 50 to 1,000 meters, and the wind speed is 7 meters per second or greater. So what we realized in looking at this map is that that Romania actually possesses quite a good technical resource for offshore wind. It's got wind speeds over 7.5 meters per second in areas that are fairly shallow, so under 50 meters. And we realized it has a technical potential of 76 gigawatts. About a third of that is in fixed foundation, and the rest is in floating. So already from that point, we realized that there was a good basis for pursuing an offshore wind, because those two fundamental conditions were met. Click again. There was also a very strong government commitment, and we realized as in developing the roadmap in parallel, we were working with the government on development of the offshore wind law. And I have to say that in all the 24 countries in which we have worked, Romania was the first one that we worked with that actually launched an offshore wind law that set out the country's ambitions for development. So this was an extremely promising step, and showed that the government was had commitment to see offshore wind through. Next, click again. We also realized that there was potential for a new industry. Certainly, Romania has a remarkable potential in manufacturing, particularly in steel fabrication, and also its port capacity is very strong. So we realized that there was a great potential for skilled jobs development and to boost investments, and then furthermore to develop the ports, and specifically the port of Constanța. So click again. And then lastly, we realized that there was a good, regional development opportunity. So, as shown in the map, it's not just in Romania that there is a good wind resource. There's some resource in Bulgaria. Turkey is actually actively developing, is pursuing its offshore wind ambitions. I'll be in Istanbul next week, where we are going to be launching the offshore wind roadmap for Turkey. And so that's, again, what you're seeing develop is kind of a hub of offshore wind in the region. And we've actually recently completed some work for the government of Ukraine, looking at what it would take to develop their considerable offshore wind resources over the long term, in order to increase their energy independence. And next slide. So on that basis, we said, okay, there's good rationale, the good reasons for pursuing offshore wind in Romania. So let's start digging into the details. And this is where we developed the roadmap that we were just released in September. So the two scenarios that the roadmap looked at were, from a low growth side, we looked at what would happen if Romania were to install 3 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2035. 3 gigawatts in the context of developments in Western Europe may not sound like much, but within the context of Romania's electricity grid, this would represent about 16% of total electricity supply, which is already starting to be a considerable amount. Under the high growth scenario, we looked at development of 7 gigawatts of offshore wind, and in this case, offshore wind by 2035 with 7 gigawatts in the Black Sea. would represent about 37% of Romania's, or would satisfy about 37% of the country's electricity needs. This is starting to get to be a penetration rate that is comparable to some of the leading jurisdictions in Western Europe. So already that's a very ambitious target to pursue. Now, when we looked at development of both scenarios, we started doing some constraint mapping. So again, that first exercise we did 5 years ago kind of looked at just technical potential in terms of water depth and wind speed. We went a step further in the roadmap to look at other constraints, particularly around environmental and social. And this was a major issue because of the particularly around biodiversity concerns near the Danube Delta. Also considerations for shipping, for fishing, and other activities in and around the designated areas. The map that you see here shows the 5 zones that we initially selected as that at this point appear to be appropriate for offshore wind development. The first 4 zones are almost exclusively in the green area, which indicates that that's fixed bottom territory, so under 50 meters depth. The 5th area is actually majority in floating. So what it means is that under the low growth scenario where you're developing 3 gigawatts, that will likely all be fixed. If you go for the high growth scenario where it's 7 gigawatts, then you're likely going to start having to develop some of the floating potential. And again, with floating foundations, the cost tends to increase. So we also realized that there was some, under both scenarios, there was some supply chain development, and there was almost certainly a utilization of existing ports, both for construction and for O&M. So let's take we'll look a bit more in depth at the impacts of both scenarios. So next slide. So under the low growth scenario, there was, in this case, you would have about 150 wind turbines, all fixed foundation that would be in the water by 2035. You're looking at a capex expenditure of somewhere between 9 to 10 billion euros. And the levelized cost of electricity would start somewhere in the range of 72 to 93 euros per megawatt hour in 2029, which is when you would have the first turbines in the water. And then that would reduce by 2035 down to a range of 52 to 76 euros per megawatt hour. Our assumption is that about 28% of the content of these projects would qualify as local. So this would primarily be towers and substations, and then some of the balance of plant around the wind farms. You'd be looking at 21,000 full-time equivalent years of employment created by 2035. And under this, under 3 gigawatts, there would be some investment that's required in transmission, and there'd be relatively little investment required in the ports, just because with 3 gigawatts, you would not likely would not be able to justify a large-scale investment in the port upgrades. Next one. Under the high growth scenario, we already start to see that you start to benefit from the economies of scale, and this is typical with offshore wind. It is very much a creature of scale, and with scale, you get lower costs and you get greater impacts, and that's what we saw in the roadmap. So under the high growth scenario, 7 gigawatts, you have about 360 turbines in the water. You have a capex around about 19 billion. And you have a levelized cost of electricity that starts at the same range, but then it actually reduces down to something in the range of 47 to 68 euros per megawatt hour. And that's strictly because the greater economy of scale that you have with offshore wind is going to drive the cost down faster. You also would get a local content of about 38%, because in addition to building towers and substations, you're also likely building monopiles and other labor-intensive and cost-intensive components in the country, because, again, with that larger scale, you can justify making those investments in that manufacturing. Similarly, you would also have fairly significant investments in the ports, mainly Constanța, for construction marshalling. And you would actually need significant investments in transmission. So to be able to evacuate 7 gigawatts from the Black Sea, given the supply demand and the characteristics of the grid in Romania, you would actually need a fairly significant investment in transmission to evacuate that power. Next one. So we looked at in detail at many aspects of all of these impacts we looked at in terms of job creation, environmental and social, impacts on fishing communities, technical impacts, etc. One of the ones that I want to focus on today is supply chain. And so we looked at essentially the readiness of the Romanian supply chain to be able to fit into the requirements of offshore wind from both a manufacturing standpoint, from a port standpoint, from a value chain standpoint, like operations and maintenance. And the chart that you see here, so the rows correspond to a particular category of supply chain development, be it from project development to blade manufacture down to wind farm operations and maintenance. And then the boxes show basically the level of readiness or suitability of the existing capacity in Romania to be able to meet the demand for that particular supply chain category. And basically red means that there's little readiness, green means that there is high levels of readiness. So what you see in this, what you see here is that it's clear that there are early opportunities, particularly in tower manufacture, because it's relatively simple. For foundation supply, either a jacket or more likely a monopile foundation. For offshore substation supply, there's already good capacity in Romania, so that's certainly an area where you would expect to see some supply chain development. And then further down the list on wind farm operation and turbine maintenance and service, and then balance of plant maintenance. All of those areas are fantastic opportunities where you already have an existing capacity that you can build on in Romania in order to be able to satisfy this need. And this is under both the low and high growth scenarios. Conversely, there's a few areas that would be very difficult to initiate supply chain activities in. One of them is, as you see, is blades. Nacelle hub and assembly would be very difficult. Again, that's a function of the fact that there's relatively limited manufacturing capability right now in those areas, and also the fact that the scale of the developments would not necessarily justify the investment that's needed in order to bring those up to for those factories to be competitive. Some of the recommendations that kind of fall out of this is essentially to say, look, regardless of whether it's low growth or high growth scenario, it's really important to establish an action plan. One of the experiences we've seen from developed markets and new markets in offshore wind is that you need a concerted effort and a collaboration between the government and industry in order to make supply chain development work. So we have examples like the sector deal in the UK that has been a successful example. On the other end of the scale, things like local content requirements do not lead to a favorable result. So it's much better to have, again, that open consultation, having industry and government work together to establish targets, and then having industry work to satisfy those targets, for the betterment of the or for the interests of both of its own activities and that of the government. So yeah, that's really, it's important to establish that industrial development plan. This is actually a model that you might have seen in Poland had assumed as well, developing a sector plan and using that as a basis for its supply chain development rather than local content requirements. Next slide. So finally, I think this kind of illustrates the larger recommendations of the offshore wind roadmap. It's based on a report that we issued a couple of years ago called Key Factors for Successful Development of Offshore Wind in Emerging Markets, and essentially it establishes the steps with respect to development of a strategy, policy, frameworks, and delivery for Romania over the next 10 years. As I said, the offshore wind law provides a really excellent basis for that development, and we think that it was a very proactive thing for the government to do, and we were very, I think it more than other countries that are developing offshore wind, it really sent out a signal saying that the country is very serious and intends to have offshore wind as an important part of its energy mix. But as it goes down that path, those policy and frameworks will need to be defined. And so at this point, we are looking to provide assistance to the government of Romania as it implements all the details that are required in order to make offshore wind a reality in the energy mix. Next slide. So I'll close it off there, and this is the QR codes that you see on this slide. You can scan to download the roadmap in both English and Romanian. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you also, Sean. It was great to see the work that you done with the World Bank and with the Ministry of Energy. The roadmap is very, very comprehensive. So you have over 200 pages, I think, of information there. So it's a good lecture. Sean, I will open it now to the audience for any potential questions, and if not, I will have one or two for you. So maybe from the audience, someone wants to ask something. Sure.
Hi, Sean. My name is Alex Gorosaru. I support a company called KT Associates. I'm a geoscientist engineer, heavily involved in Romania, and I gave the first lecture of introduction to offshore renewables in Romania about 10 years ago. So it's been a while. I tried to present the Neptune Deep data at the time. I failed. I was not allowed to. But my interest is in the next steps. It is very important for Romania to start acquiring site data, which is normally being given beforehand to developers interested. Yeah, so planning site investigations, monitoring site metocean conditions at the sea, some acquisition of preliminary data, which is a must to further develop projects. Are there any recommendations based on the study on how to set up such acquisition of metocean data, wind measurement, offshore, and then a whole range of additional studies, including my geoscience that I'm interested in? Yeah,
that's a great question. So there's really globally there's two approaches to doing project development. You can there's either what we call a one-stage approach, which is what the Dutch do, and then there's a two-stage approach, which is the approach that the UK and the US and a few other countries do. Under the first approach with the Dutch, what they do is they do all of the essentially all this. The government does all the site characterization work themselves. So they do all of the on-site wind measurement, they do the geotechnical work, geophysical work, metocean, they do all of the environmental and social surveys, and effectively what you end up with is, when they go to bid the site out, the developer is just bidding on price, and if they manage to get the lowest price, then they get the permits and they have all the data that they need in order to build the project. And the second process, which is what the US and the UK and other places do, is you do minimal investigations on the site, you bid out the site, and then whoever wins that site, they do all of the detailed geotechnical and they do all the detailed investigations. In general, the second approach is one that most jurisdictions tend towards, and in that case, what you do is it's actually a fairly light touch data acquisition on the sites. So you are getting some wind data. You can do that through a scanning LiDAR. You're doing you're doing biodiversity sensitivity mapping, essentially to make sure that you are not, there is no huge red flags on biodiversity. But effectively, it's on the basis of that light touch data. You're not going in and doing boreholes. You're not doing detailed geotechnical investigations. And frankly, in Romania, you've got an oil and gas sector that's already done many of these investigations, and it's on that basis that you then designate the site and go to the developer saying, bid on this site, and if you win this site, you are the ones that are going to be doing those detailed investigations. You're doing the boreholes. You're going to have a floating LiDAR. You're going to do all of your med-ocean work. You're going to do all the surveys that are required in order to get your environmental impact assessment. So that is, generally the approach that is recommended. So as I said, like light touch at the beginning, but then really leave it up to the developer to do the site de-risking, because this is what they do best. They know what data they want, and they're willing to spend that as long as they have a clear site exclusivity and they have a clear path to market. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Sean. It's definitely also presented in a draft law, which are the next steps, basically to how the permitting stage will be implemented and how the acquisition is already drafted there. It was just because I know what the site conditions are mostly to be in. I think it's still advisable to do some preliminary studies, which are given even minimum. You gave the example of the Netherlands. I know it very well. Also, France is following it. Also, Belgium and other in Germany. The minimum package is still very useful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, the key word with offshore wind development is de-risking. And you are going through levels of de-risking a site, and you're right. You're doing that initial de-risking just to be able to understand the basic characteristics is critical. And then when the developer is actually doing when they're doing their FEED study, their full engineering and design study, that's when they're de-risking it down to the next level. The thing is that as you de-risk a site, you spend a lot more money. Doing an initial de-risking costs you, say, $1 million on a site. Doing full de-risking on a site costs like $50 million, because just the geotechnical surveys alone can cost $10 to $15 million. So it's like peeling the layers of an onion. And you're right, that initial characterization, that initial de-risking has to get you to the point where a developer can say, I don't know everything about this site, but I know enough about this site to be able to know if it's going to be appropriate for a wind farm or not. So you're right. That's going through those iterations is a really careful. It's a careful balance between the risk that's assumed by the government and the risk that's assumed by the developer.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you very much. Sean, I don't know if your time allows, but if yes, you are more than welcome to stay with us during the entire session. If no, we say thank you to you now, and we really, really appreciate your presence here today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good. So right now, I think we can move to the people that we have here, and which have been very, very patient. Thank you. So now I will move to Oana, who is, as I said, the managing partner at Ijdelea and Associates, but she also has the role of the director of the legal department within the Black Sea Oil and Gas. So Oana, welcome once again, and could you please share how the expertise gained from the oil and gas industry could be of benefit for the offshore wind sector, currently at its early stages in Romania?
Yes, hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for your patience. We say in Romania that good things happen to people which have patience till the end. I hope this will be the case. one of the things that absolutely baffles me after so many years of proactively assisting our clients in doing successful project development in Romania is how difficult it is for the government and for the authorities to go up on a learning curve. And the learning curve of one industry or one arm of the industry trying to help build up faster and in a better way other segments of the industry. And for example, it's very obvious even from this effort with the offshore wind law that they failed to understand the crucial element and the crucial perspective from which any investor looks at this kind of massive undertakings, which is, what are the prerequisites to reaching a positive final investment decision? And a positive final investment decision requires exactly those items which are not addressed by the law, either on purpose or, because of mere negligence, or which are left at the hand of secondary and tertiary legislation, although the devil lies in the details. On top of my list would be the absence of fiscal and taxation stability. These kind of projects require a very clear, stable, transparent, and set in stone in the law fiscal regime. This also includes the royalties, which under the current form of the law are to be set by secondary legislation, probably very closely to the moment when concessions would be granted. I have to say it out loud, no serious investor and no investor whose pockets are deep enough to do at least 1.5 gigawatts of offshore wind will launch into this adventure without knowing from the very beginning the fiscal impact and the cost impact and the taxation impact. Then we go to market. Adding as a minimum 1.5, and I say 1.5 because 1.5 gigawatts is the least that from our assessment would make point to be developed in order to make the project economical in Romania and in the realities of the following 5 years, let's say. So adding 1.5 gigawatts of power to the existing grid and into the country altogether would make it absolutely impossible to allow for coexistence with the other energy sources. So what the market needs? It needs two things. It needs the crucial capability to export the power. And here we need no restriction in the law, and such restrictions should also be guaranteed by the concession agreements to be granted, and also a strong and powerful grid, which unfortunately in the last 35 years has proved to be the weakest point in Romania's energy system, the ability to have a transmission grid which is forceful enough and which develops fast enough in order to capture all the injected power, without having entities like the National Dispatch shutting down production on this producer, on the other producer, or for offshore wind this will not work. We have a wonderful onshore wind industry which has been struggling a lot with the issues around the dispatching. But for offshore wind this will not work. Another thing which has to be taken into account, and where unfortunately the law fails specifically, and I believe this addresses the question that was asked from the audience earlier, is the ability to de-risk sites. Well, as long as for any kind of study, review, assessment that needs to be done offshore, you need a permit, but the law prohibits you from doing any kind of permitting related to the future development of an offshore wind project until concessions are granted. Although these kind of investments would be done at the risk and cost of the investor, not of the state, and them as being part of a public process, because permitting and regulatory processes in Romania are transparent and are accessible by any party justifying an interest. So data and information which once gathered, benefits everybody because it is part of a regulatory process. Again, big investors and investors which are spoiled for choice where to go on this planet and deploy their money and deploy their knowledge and deploy their, their projects, are deterred from coming into the country. Why should I come here, run for a concession agreement, get a concession agreement which for sure is going to be with the deadlock clauses that will follow me for at least 15 to 20 years without knowing the cost, with not knowing how and when would I be able to de-risk my project and not go anywhere else. I mean, these are legitimate questions that any sane investor asks themselves. We forget another thing which comes to the ability of attracting investors and developers, and also the ability of attracting suppliers, attracting EPC companies, other types of service providers, is the fact that we have a war in the Black Sea. And the war in the Black Sea, no matter how unfortunate and not nice this word is, brings immediately another additional cost, which is the cost of insurance. The cost of insurance for the vessels, for the rigs, for all the goods that would have to come into the Black Sea, eventually reach the port of Constanța, and have them implemented and developed and built and assembled and installed in the Romanian offshore. Once that would be done, it would be the cost of insurance of holding together the infrastructure and operations per se. Speaking about costs, I think everybody should be mindful that the Black Sea being a closed sea, the only way in or out is through the Bosphorus Strait. The Bosphorus Strait, under international treaties, has a crossing regime which is controlled fully by Turkey, and which asks for significant passing charges for the undercrossing of the Bosphorus Bridge. And all these huge blades, the rigs, part of the vessels would have to come into the Black Sea. And looking at the offshore oil and gas industry in Romania, we have still, for 12 years now, one of the most expensive drilling equipments on this planet being abandoned in the Black Sea. The development driller equipment which was used to drill some of the deep wells in Romania's waters. The reason why it is still here is that it would have been too expensive for the owners to bring it out of the Black Sea without having a firm contract of drilling somewhere else in the world. It is not only that. We also have a need to align environmental permitting proceedings which for this kind of projects have to be extremely detailed and absolutely lengthy. On the other hand, we have the pressure of the RED III directive to be implemented in Romania to allow for acceleration proceedings, matters which are in conflict. Another absent thing that will greatly affect the diversity of potential investors for this industry in Romania is the current absence of a state aid scheme. Yes, we have it in the strategy, we have it in the plan, we have it in the public and political declarations of key people working in government authorities. But currently there is no state aid scheme and no state funding ensured for these projects. And I heard somebody from the Ministry of Energy say that, well, we initially had state aid in there in the draft, but we removed it because we had investors that declared they have sufficient money to do it by themselves. I don't know who are these investors? I would very much like to meet them and touch them to see how real and tangible they are, because no matter how well they are doing and how wealthy they are, no sane investor says no to free money. And yes, this makes the pool smaller and smaller and smaller, the pool of potential investors. And last on my list, but not necessarily of lesser importance, is to understand exactly how Romania's its own wind development plans fit into the country's strategy. Because we see that we are heavily involved in this undertaking of having a cable that would bring offshore wind power generated in the eastern part of the Black Sea, through the Black Sea to undercross Romania along the Brua line and feed Western Europe with electricity. This in itself is a massive undertaking as well. And we never did too well at juggling and at being able to do two or more great things in the same time. So the country should decide on what do they wish to focus. Being just a country which is transited and where they can charge like a small gate fee, or actually incentivize our own development and our own country growth. I think these are absolutely valid questions and points to be considered by anybody looking at offshore wind. And also we look at the onshore wind industry in Romania, how wonderful everybody did despite all challenges, hurdles, blockages, taxation, fee, change of regulation. It's absolutely great, and we should also learn from that and not put the same kind of burden on the shoulders of this industry, which is currently non-existent.
Thank you, Oana. It is true at this moment, in the first stages of developing such a difficult, let's say, sector, the offshore wind. It's hard to reach perfection, but I think your points are very good here, because we have to learn from the lessons learned of other advanced sectors.
Marta, I like that we also have targets. I think this is absolutely amazing. We are full of optimism and enthusiasm when we have targets. And I see the targets. They are extremely, extremely ambitious. And what I actually hope is that it won't be like the story of me Saturday afternoon after eating half a kilo of pie, thinking that, Monday I'll go to the gym and I'll start dieting. But in the interim, there is still Sunday for me to enjoy.
I think I just became hungry. But let's move to the audience. Are there any questions for Oana?
I have one question. I will say it loud.
Please.
So the idea is, most likely, the investor must assume the risk of this unpredictability. Let's just name it like that. Given the conditions, the regional conditions, let's name it like that. Do you believe that there is going to be any delay in the government to carry on this study and to start the concession process as per the law schedule?
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you very much, Oana, once again. And right now, after we address the offshore wind topics, we are looking towards onshore wind as well, with the help of Taras here, who had a very, very incredible patience. but he's the director of Southeast Europe at Vestas, and he can share some insights into how Vestas managed or plans further to foster the green supply chain and drive job creation. So Taras, I think your presentation will be projected on the screen.
Yes. I think it's on the screen already. So, dear guests of this workshop, good afternoon. I have a big pleasure and also a privilege to be the last speaker during this 2 days event. So I hope you still have some energy in your batteries. So, first of all, a brief introduction of myself. Taras Kachmarchuk, Ukrainian name. I'm working for Vestas as a sales director of the Southeast Europe region, where Romania is the center of gravity in my geographical area. I am presenting today the content of this presentation, fostering green supply chain and driving job creation. And I will start with a little reminder about our company, who we are. So we are a team of around 30,000 people that are busy in designing, manufacturing, installing, and maintaining our turbines fleet. We have been the first company in the world to install 100 gigawatts. That was some years ago. And by now we have reached more than 180 gigawatts of installed capacity. We have in our own service fleet more than 150 gigawatts, which makes it the biggest service fleet in the world. And this service fleet helps to avoid more than 230 million tons of CO2 emissions annually. We are supplying technical solutions to the wind market for all of the segments. These are the 2 megawatt turbines, 4 megawatt turbines, and also the platform which is called Enventus, and these are 6 and 7 megawatt turbines. Now, it's clear that for such a global company like Vestas, it is absolutely crucial and an absolute key of success is building a scalable and robust supply chain. Our supply chain is a complex world of thousands of suppliers that are delivering materials, goods, and also services to our company. It initiates at our design and specifications. It goes into material supply, transport to our factories, of course, production, and then deliveries to our project sites where our turbines are installed and maintained up until the end of the life cycle. So clearly, managing such a complex supply chain is requiring a proper strategy. Speaking of which, some years ago, Vestas has introduced a sustainability strategy, and you can see the key elements of it on the screen, where starting with the carbon neutrality. So our company set ourselves a target of becoming carbon neutral by 2030 without offsetting mechanisms. What does it mean? It actually means that all our factories, all our production, and also installation sites will have to run on renewable electricity without an option of actually using the fossil fuel generation electricity. And we push even further because we oblige our suppliers by 2030 to limit their emissions by almost a half as well. We are planning to produce zero-waste turbines by 2040. I will say a little bit about this in a minute. And of course, we want to be socially responsible company, and we are striving of being the safest and the most inclusive employer on the market. And of course, Vestas being a technology leader, we want to remain leading the transition with our innovations that we bring to the market. we have truly global footprint. We sell our projects already sold to more than 88 markets, 89. And despite executing those projects in those places, we also have a global manufacturing footprint. So clearly in Europe, we have a strong manufacturing setup where we have factories for producing main components and also subcomponents. This is driving a big value for Europe because this is triggering a supply chain for deliveries, materials, highly technological sub-equipment, but also development of people and highly skilled personnel. Besides Europe, we also have to diversify and we need to serve geographically other markets where we are present. Therefore, we have manufacturing setups in Asia, also in North and Latin Americas. Speaking of sustainability, and I have two good examples of good practices and innovations that are born in our company. And I will start with blade circularity, which I think is one of the most exciting innovations that the industry has seen in the recent years. So Vestas, together with the partners, has developed a technology that allows to recycle the blades, old and the new blades. And these blades, they do not have to be produced from any special material. It's just a random blade that Vestas would supply to the wind farm. So that works through the process of chemical procedure where the blade, the epoxy blades would be dissolved into sub-materials without damaging the design composition of those materials. And therefore, from these materials, the new blades can be produced. So this is a message to the skeptics of the wind industry, which were saying that in the future, the planet will be polluted with landfills of blades. Now the answer is there are technologies to avoid it. The second example is currently already part of our commercial offering, and this is low emission steel. So the way it works is basically a scrap-based steel that is being used in the production of the slabs for the towers. And it is being produced with an electric arc furnace using renewable energy. By doing so, we are able to reduce emissions by 66% in production of the steel slabs compared to the conventional method. Now, why is it important? It's because the turbine consists 90% of its weight of steel and iron. And production of steel slabs and steel structures for the turbine is responsible for about 50% of CO2 emissions necessary for production of a wind turbine. So therefore, decarbonizing the process of manufacturing wind turbines is really crucial for our green industry. Now, these have been all positive messages. Of course, building a strong, sustainable, robust supply chain doesn't come without challenges and constraints. So on the short-term horizon, clearly grids, as we heard yesterday and we heard today, will be a challenge. There will be also some shortage of the vessels, but one of the most acute problems is actually people. Skilled people, mainly for servicing of our wind farms. This is one of the most scarce resources to find these days. And in the mid to the long-term horizon, it is going to become even more acute. So therefore, the industry will have to focus on developing the personnel for servicing our renewable industry. On the other hand, from mid to the long perspective, it is clear that grids will be our main challenge for renewables. It is not something in hands of a turbine supplier like ourselves, like Vestas, but steep increase in installations in the next years to come will definitely require investments in the grids and also the speed in build out and modernization of the grids. And finally, in the mid to long-term horizon, when onshore and offshore installations will match the volume of installations per year, there will be a challenge with vessels and the ports because we will have to compete with other industries for the space. Lastly, about specifics in Romania, what Vestas is doing. Some of you have seen the slide which I showed yesterday. I will just remind only shortly that Vestas installed 1.2 gigawatt to date in Romania, and we employ already 375 people, which are mainly working in service and maintenance of our wind parks. Now, after the 10-year gap on the market, Vestas has signed 5 new projects, and we are adding 413 megawatts to the grid. 2 of those projects have been already built, and 1 EPC project we are building this year with the BOP. And once these megawatts are online and running, we are adding 20 more jobs in service. So this will be highly skilled service technicians to maintain these wind farms. And during the process of construction, we are going to be employing 75 to 100 people per project during execution. For EPC, this number will be even higher. I think this will be reaching around 300 people for around 9 months duration. So now it is clear that with this momentum of new projects built out in Romania, this new wave of projects is bringing a lot of value to Romanian market, creating a lot of highly skilled jobs and also developing local expertise and knowledge in renewables industry. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. We do have a product which is called V236 15 megawatt turbine, which we are deploying in many places around the globe. Question about Romania for offshore, when the industry is there and projects are developed, right? We also make sure that we are prioritizing at the right time the market to come with our turbines.
Taras, thank you. And first of all, congrats on the latest order of 50 megawatts that Vestas won in Romania, Săcele, in Constanța. I think yesterday was announced in the media. So congrats. And starting with this, how do you foresee the near future in terms of orders? Maybe in Romania, regionally, or even farther?
Yes. So since 2021, we have opened a new page on our work in Romania, and we had a very close dialogue with a number of developers on the market. And we have seen, I would say, significant speed up in activities. So therefore, we have a list of customers with whom we are discussing the potential new projects. And I am positive that there will be more projects to come. We have an interesting pipeline. And of course, not everything is dependent on the auctions, if the auction to come. Of course, this would be a great opportunity to unlock many investment decisions. But there are also other ways how to enable the projects. And as I said yesterday, I see PPAs and also virtual financial PPAs as a great way to enable those projects and go live. So we are hoping for much more in the couple of years to come.
Fingers crossed. So. Regarding the labor market in Romania, how do you think we are situated? I saw that you gave us some figures, but are you finding people to work for Vestas in Romania? Is difficult or not? Or
like I was showing on the previous slide, people is a scarce resources, and this is not an exception in Romania. I think maybe it's even tougher in Romania compared to other markets. So, so it is a challenge, and of course we are doing our best as an employer of choice. We are trying to be attractive to people, get them on board and develop them further, increasing their expertise and knowledge so that they could bring a lot of value to us and to the country.
I see. Thank you. Are there any other questions in the audience?
Thank you, Gabriela Băcăiță, Energynomics. Is there any chance for Vestas to take into consideration building some production sites in Romania based on the targets of 10 to 13 gigawatts for the next decade, and also taking into consideration other additional orders that might come from the nearby countries? Or, as the table that I saw earlier showed, there is not much need of this? Thank you.
So, first of all, bringing local manufacturing to a new country doesn't automatically mean a commercial benefit. Usually, building a new factory in the new country means a higher cost to that component produced. So what we are focused on is, of course, creating, like I said, a robust supply chain globally, but also specifically in Europe to serve European market. And for now, we don't see a great need to open something new in Romania. Yeah, maybe there will be conditions changing, and the time will come. Of course, we'll have to see. But we are focusing on establishing our manufacturing in the places where it makes most sense to serve the markets where we are active. Thank you.
I think we can call it a wrap-up right now, because we also addressed all the questions, I think, in the audience. I just want to say thank you for your presentation and for being with us here. To the audience as well, because they listened carefully. And leave you if you want to add something at the end of the event.
Just want to congratulate you for the way you moderated. Thank you all for resisting until now. We are closing the 2 days. Yeah, hope it worth every hour that you spend here. See you next year. We are trying somehow to bring at least at the same level of representativity to each of the topics. Meanwhile, office@rwea.ro, any, I don't know, requests, questions, whatever initiatives you may have in mind, let's build a renewable wave, sustainable, and put there additional hundreds of jobs and hundreds of things happening locally. Let's have a glass of wine.
Thank you.